We seem to hear from a lot of Americans who make it an obligation to vote. Now let's switch directions and hear from voters who could vote but chose not to. CNT correspondent Brandon Booker brings us the story.
With the election right around the corner, we see political ads everywhere from television to the internet to remind us to vote. But some UNCP students decided not to cast a vote at all in this year's election. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, about 13% of Americans don't vote because they do not like either candidate.
They can promise whatever they say while they're trying to get elected, whether they accomplish that or not when they're in office. You know, a lot of times I think politicians don't. They don't do what they say they're going to do. So I don't have an opinion either way on either candidate.
The U.S. Census Bureau also found out that the age group of 18 to 24-year-olds has the highest number of unregistered voters at 42%.
I'm not registered because I'm uninformed. I don't really know much about politics. I still live with my parents, so my political knowledge is based on what they tell me. And I feel like overall, I just feel like my vote doesn't really count.
In 2008, only 64% of eligible Americans voted, which is around 130 million people. Since most Americans who didn't vote think their one vote doesn't really count, they fit into the 75 million Americans who could have voted but didn't. So your one vote does count. For Carolina News Today, I'm Brandon Booker.
In a tight-knit election where the smallest group of voters can make an impact, it is important that young voters understand the power of their vote. WNCP reporter Hillary Ackers caught up with some first-time voters.
For the majority of voters, this election season, while exciting, can become old hat. The political campaigns, the debates, the hype, it's just the same old thing that happens every 4 years. But for one group, this year is very special. For students between the ages of 18 and 21, this presidential election is the first in which they will be able to cast their vote. And while some students take the opportunity to vote seriously, others find it hard to find time to even register. I caught up with first-time voter Andrew Reese to get his take on voting.
Well, it's a privilege to vote. Many countries aren't able to vote for their representatives, and I want to take that and use it to its full advantage.
First-time voters are surrounded this year by political ads, but some voters have decided to further research the political platforms of candidates. Reese said he wanted to understand exactly what he was voting for this election.
Like this year, I just did pick and choose for primaries, but when I got my absentee ballot, I did research with the Board of Education and all the judges because it made my vote represent my ideas rather than like, oh, I'm just going to pick one, I don't know.
Some first-time voters might also find the process confusing. Some don't vote simply because of missed deadlines or misinformation. First-time voter Samantha Langley said that although she is registered to vote, she didn't get the chance this year.
No, I have not. I was 12 minutes late for the polls on Saturday.
Although Langley didn't make it to vote this election, she did tell me the political opinion she formed this election season.
I would have voted for Mitt Romney because I feel like that Obama's policies try to they live in the playing field, but the only thing is they don't give a lot of freedom. Like Obamacare, to me, that is the epitome of socialism. It's very, we're going to give you what we think's right instead of what you work for yourself. So I don't believe that's right.
For WNCP-TV, I'm Hillary Ackers.
With the election today, some voters are still a little nervous and don't know who to vote for quite yet. WNCP's Jake Daly brings us the story.
With the 2012 presidential election right around the corner, most voters have already decided to vote for Republican candidate Mitt Romney or to elect President Barack Obama to a second term. But some are still undecided. And this year's election looks as close as any other in previous years. The undecided voter could be more important than ever. With so many political views on so many different topics, it seems difficult for some voters to find a candidate that appeals to them on every platform. UNCP senior Riley Thayer says she will have to do more research in order to make her final decision.
Well, I've been keeping up with the debates, and both parties have made valid arguments and ideas for the benefit of the country. But I just need to do more research before I make a final decision.
According to the Huffington Post, only 7% of likely voters are undecided, while 10% are leaning toward one candidate but are far from firm in their choice. UNCP senior James Mullally said he would have to do more research on both candidates after missing the debates due to work.
You know, at this point, I just feel like I don't know what I need to know to make an educated vote. So, you know, I just need to look into it more and, you know, maybe catch up on some of the debates I missed due to work and stuff and see what I think then.
This race looks to be one of the closest in history, making every vote count that much more. For WNCP, I'm Jake Daly.
After 4 years as Commander-in-Chief, President Barack Obama is the first African-American man to win a presidential election. Now in 2012, some wonder, is race really a factor in this year's election? CNT reporter Quaylen Shipp brings us the story.
Could Obama's struggle with white voters cost him the election this year? Or could Romney's struggle with African-American voters cost him this election? Only time will tell. Race has played a major role in the past two presidential elections, which these two candidates look forward to the results of the voters with a win in becoming this year's president. I had a chance to catch up with the director of the Multicultural Center here at UNCP, Robert Canada, to discuss his views on the turnout of African American voters from 2008 until now.
12 election, from what I've been researching, the turnout is not as high this year as it was the first term of his presidency. I mean, we have about a week and a half before the actual elections hit. So I'm hoping more people will get out and vote, but are they voting because he's black? You will have some that will vote just because he is African American.
Representative John Lewis of Georgia made it clear in a recent speech that in 1965 it was almost impossible to vote for the states of Georgia, Alabama, Virginia, and Texas because registering created discrimination of race dealing with African Americans. Director Canada, being a registered African American voter, touched on how his race will react if Obama's not elected.
Not being flippant, I don't think we're going to see an incident where, like in LA, the riots, when there was some issues with police brutality. For those African Americans that are upset, should he not be reelected, they should only be upset if they didn't vote. I won't sit here and say it'll be a sad day in the United States if President Obama is not reelected. I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to actually go out and vote early today, so to make my vote count. So I encourage everyone who's eligible to vote to go out and vote.
How the African American vote goes this time around remains to be seen. For WNCP-TV, I'm Quaylen Shipp.
A UNCP student has made it his job to get students out to vote in this year's presidential election. WNCP reporter DJ Burris brings us the story.
The 2012 election is an important one for many people, and someone has to do the job of voter registration coordinator in the hopes to get as many voters as possible to exercise their right to vote. A job as a coordinator usually involves going door to door and asking residents to have they registered to vote. UNCP student Spencer Hall takes his job as a field manager seriously, who works for the nonprofit organization Unifor One Stop Collaborative based out of Conover, North Carolina. Hall details what he does on a normal day of work.
And basically what we do, we assist people to register to vote. And we just go around, we go talk to people, we go to different shopping centers and different communities and neighborhoods and try to encourage people to vote and tell them that they have it's a right, it's not, it's a privilege, it's not like something that's given to us. You got to exercise your right or it will be taken away from you.
Hall, a Greensboro native and business marketing major at UNCP, spends ample amount of time getting UNCP students to take advantage of the opportunity to vote by going door to door at apartment complexes in the area.
How you doing, sir? My name is Spencer Hall, Unifor One Stop Collaborative. Have you registered to vote?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay. So did you get your registration card in the mail already?
I did, yes. I got it about 3 days ago.
Okay, so you know where you're supposed to vote and all? Okay, well, if you look on your voter registration card, there's a section in there that just explains where you're supposed to vote at, so you just look on there and just go to where it tells you to vote.
All right, thanks, man.
You can early vote right now, or you can wait till election day.
All right, cool.
A voters registration firm out of Florida that worked for the Republican Party was flagged for voters fraud because of improper registration forms from employees that were filling out forms with false information in the attempt to get paid more for their services. Hall discusses what measures his organization takes to prevent issues like this from happening.
Our organization, personally, we have these sheets called back sheets, And basically, every day that we have a different batch, we fill out the form, and then we have a person that goes, it's called quality control, that goes through and they look at each form. We're supposed to inspect the forms ourselves, and then they're inspected again. So she goes through, and if she feels like that something's wrong with it, or if she feels like the person may have not, then she'll let the boss know, then they'll take care of the situation.
From Carolina News Today, this is DJ Burris.
Coming up in sports, the women's cross country team makes it to the national championship.
And we celebrate the Athlete of the Week. All this and more when we return.
The women's cross-country team is heading to the national championship after coming off of a stellar performance at the Southeast Regional Championships. Leading the way for the Lady Braves was Livia Mahaffey as she placed third. The Lady Braves will travel to Joplin, Missouri next week, where they will race for the Division II national title. Earlier this week, head coach Gary Aycock explained how proud he was of his team.
We're really excited about how the women raced at the region championships. I think that we had held the #1 ranked spot in the region through the majority of the year. This fall, we actually ran a practice race at Wingate, in which I had them do a practice run in the middle of a meet, and those results bumped us down to, I think, the 6th or 7th spot in the region. So I knew that going into Saturday's race that we had a good shot at qualifying for the national championships. Faced some adversity early on before the gun went off with uniform issues with the NCAA rep. The girls we put on cold weather tights, and it was 65-degree temperatures, and I said, hey, look, things happen. We just have to do the best with what we have. It really inspired them, fired them up. They went out extremely strong, held their placing for the most part throughout the 6K race.
This past weekend, the Lady Braves volleyball team suffered a devastating loss to USC Aiken on senior night. USC Aiken really controlled much of the game, sweeping the Lady Braves in 3 sets. Notable performances for the Braves included Shay Peterson, leading the team with 10 kills. Junior Marissa Baker totaled 8 herself, while Ashley Robick totaled 25 assists. Coming off of a 14-point loss in their first exhibition contest against Division I foe Stanford University, the Braves were hoping for a more West Coast-friendly matchup against the University of San Francisco. That wouldn't be the case, as the Braves found themselves in a hole early at the end of the second half of action, down 32 points to USF, and could never fight their way back as they lost 57-94. Top performances for the Braves included Quamaine Rose with 11 points on the night, while George Blakeney grabbed 9 rebounds for the team. Next up for the Braves will be the Disney West Coast Tip-Off Classic on Friday. And congratulations to Pardon Luvu for the second year in a row. The senior runner captured the Southeast Regional title in the 10K run this past weekend. Pardon was 31 seconds better than the second-place finisher and helped pace the Braves to a 6th-place finish overall. Following his performance this week, Pardon was named to the all-regional team as well. Next up for Pardon will be the NCAA Division II National Championship next week.
That does it for our newscast.
Be sure to stay tuned for our election night show coming up next.